Hello, everyone. Very random, weird, random video on a Friday, December 28th, 2018 at 1:03 p.m. It's just sometimes easier for me to do a live stream because it takes less time to render, and I figure you guys can see this later on. Anyway, so hi, guys. I wanted to talk about something for a few minutes with you guys. And first of all, I hope you had a fantastic Christmas holiday, if you celebrate. If you're listening to this later on after the original live, please don't get angry with me if I talk to the audience that's here. Hi, guys. How are you? It's so cool to see you. I like doing these. I should do these more. Everybody try to be kind to one another in the chat. Thank you. You guys rock. So I want to go over this. I want to talk about Roy Moore. This election back in the day was so hotly contested. He lost by less than 22,000 votes. We had the yearbook page, all the controversy, the allegations that he was a pedophile. It was like almost like Kavanaugh light, right? I mean, they started it off almost like Kavanaugh light. It was a test run for Kavanaugh. It was a test run. So on the 20th, before Christmas even happened, the New York Times put out this article about how this group took funding, and this group wrote the just recently released by the Senate Intelligence Committee, which I beg to differ about the middle word there. They wrote the report about Russian disinformation, social media, and manipulation during the 2016 election. And they spent the Russians supposedly, allegedly spent like $4,000 as per Facebook and Twitter, etc., on ads on both sides of the aisle to try and sway people's opinions and things like that. And we talked about this today on the podcast, which will come out at 5:00 tonight. That there is a real thing. It's called search engine. Search engine manipulation effect, where search engines can basically manipulate results and therefore sway public opinion in elections up to 60%. 60%, which if you think about it is quite stunning. How much control these guys have. And Gohmert just came out with a bill, by the way, too. I'm kind of skipping around here, but Gohmert just came out with a bill to hold some of the employees at some of these companies accountable for what they're doing. So these people, this group, happened to be all Democrats. What a surprise. Basically they did the analysis on the supposed Russian influence campaign, and they said to themselves, you know what? Now that we know all this information, let's see if it actually works. Let's run a test. And instead of being responsible about it, they took funding from LinkedIn's co-founder, billionaire tech guy, who donated $750,000. They took $100,000 of that, and they ran a test of this social media manipulation bot, which we're going to get into in a second, tool thing, in the middle of an actual election. A hotly contested, very controversial election. They ran it during that. And now they're trying to backtrack and say, oh, we didn't, it didn't have any effect. It wasn't successful. It had a negligible result. $100,000 versus $4,000. So they're trying to tell us that $4,000 of spend influenced the 2016 presidential election, and that a targeted, specific $100,000 spend using a group that it specializes in this in a small, or not small, but a statewide race had zero effect. Those two things just don't square. They don't square. So I wanted to just go through this. There's a couple stories out there I wanted to talk in a thread. Now, before I get into that, an interesting group is behind all of this. Hamilton 68 kind of runs tandem here. We've talked about Hamilton 68 before and what they do. Bill Kristol's on the board, John Podesta on the advisory board. A lot of never Trumpers. They tout being, bipartisan, but they're not. It's a bunch of neocon establishment swamp rats running the place. And they say they monitor 600 Russian accounts and then group the data in from all of the accounts that follow those accounts. And they try to basically say, well, you're a Russian bot and you're a Russian bot and you're a Russian bot. And they did that to us during the Nunez memo push. They said that we were all Russian bots, the people that were trying to get the memo. The memo released. We're all Russian bots. Walkaway campaign. It's a Russian influence campaign. It's a Russian influence campaign. Oh, and I got a new chair. There's no more squeaking. I know you guys are so happy. I'm happy. It's so comfortable. Thank goodness. I got it as a Christmas gift. Anyway. Boom. Democrats took the Russian model. So Russia's 2016 disinformation campaign targeted both pro-Trump and pro-Hillary supporters. The liberal mainstream media does not like to mention in their reporting that Russia spent $6,000 in the last 6 weeks of the 2016 election on ads, $4,600 on Google ads in the entirety of the 2016 campaign. The Russian influence in the 2016 election was minimal and is one of the biggest lies by the left of this century. I agree. I love you guys too. My gosh. It gets better though. Guess who else? The same hacks who ran the deceptive campaign against Roy Moore are the same people that wrote the Russia interference report for the U.S. Senate. The same people. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall is investigating the Democrat election corruption. Doug Jones, who I would be surprised if there wasn't some connection, has said that he wants an investigation into it. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said Thursday his office is exploring whether disinformation tactics deployed against Republican Roy Moore during last year's special election violated state campaign laws. The information is concerning. The impact it had on the election is something that, I lost it. Is something that's significant for us to explore, and we'll go from here. Marshall, who said he learned of the disinfo campaign called Project Birmingham through news reports over the past 2 weeks, stopped short of announcing a formal investigation, but said his office was beginning to gather information. LinkedIn billionaire sorry for funding Russian bot disinformation campaign against Roy Moore. American Engagement Technologies, which Hoffman gave $750,000 to, put $100,000 of the money towards New Knowledge, a cybersecurity firm which fabricated 1,000 Russian language Twitter accounts to follow Moore, and then say he was being followed by Russian bots, so he was supported by Russians. Here is a really good thread about Hamilton 68 and their involvement. This gentleman, who's linked in the description box below, says he was the first to notice Hamilton 68's role in lending credibility to the false flag op in the Senate Alabama race through someone who was involved in creating the dashboard and the disinfo. The false flag is a lesson in laundering credibility for disinfo, and this is how it works, and this is how they did the dossier, and this is how they do it all the time. Create botnets and other disinformation, promoting Roy Moore, blame the Russians, validate the claim via Hamilton 68. The media amplifies and legitimizes it, and then it impacts votes. Bill Kristol, Glenn Greenwald, Bill Kristol, John Podesta, Mike Chertoff, a bunch of other intelligence guys. Kramer, who gave the dossier to from Fusion GPS into, he laundered it for McCain. I did a whole video on David Kramer's connection to Russia. Mike Morrell, former director of the CIA. Google News shows 252 media articles referring to the Hamilton 68 dashboard. Kavanaugh, Roy Moore, McCain and Romney critics, the deep state hashtag, release the memo hashtag. the alt-right, and the walkaway hashtag. I can tell you from very close personal experience, walkaway is not a Russian disinformation campaign. Hamilton 68 specific funders are unknown, but there's a donor list for GMFUS. Top donors, the State Department, USAID, NATO, Foreign Ministries, Google, and Open Society Foundation. Much of the funding comes from the Democracy Fund, whose main benefactor is Pierre Omidyar. Omidyar's foundation funds significant Never Trump activity. It's worth noting how the language of democracy is used in the brands of the Never Trump organizations funded by Democracy Fund. It's all about democracy, democracy. They make it sound nice and pretty. It's never pretty. It's never pretty. He says, my interactions with people in the disinformation community suggest the vast majority are left-leaning but earnest, technically talented, and professional. A few have reached out to me and are furious about the Alabama Senate op. But there's enough of a fact pattern to question whether there's a more sinister motive behind Hamilton 68. Of course there is. Of course there is. It's all about controlling your minds, getting you to think things that aren't true, swaying your opinions. And they can use that to control the things that they don't have control over, i.e. elections. Apparently, for all of the chants for years that they're rigged by machines, they still lack some ability to completely rig. Otherwise, they wouldn't be spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on propaganda to sway your opinions. This, he also has the executive summary of this, supposedly. Now, I don't like the way this looks. I'm not saying it's not real, but I don't understand why this looks this way. So I'm kind of on it. Why am I spending so much time talking to you guys about this today? Because this is important. For however long they've spent yelling at us that the Russians were hacking the elections, they're hacking the election. It's just, you can't even make it up. Oh, how pretty. Okay. Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall said Thursday he's opening an investigation into whether a disinformation campaign targeting Republican Roy Moore violated campaign laws and tilted a close election. Democratic operatives allegedly used Facebook and Twitter to undermine support for Moore and boost Democrat Doug Jones, who narrowly won the U.S. Senate race. Marshall is worried the ruse affected the outcome of the election, especially considering the rapidly changing nature of social media campaigns. The information is concerning. Reports about the caper began making the rounds after the New York Times reported on the matter on December 19th. News of the so-called false flag operation, which involved operatives from American Engagement Technologies creating fake Russian bots to follow Moore, took off from there. Billionaire Reid Hoffman added fuel to the fire when he apologized Wednesday for funding the effort but left crucial questions unanswered. His statement didn't include a detailed accounting of everyone involved, nor did it explain who crafted and executed it. He gave $750,000 to the organization, much of it going to the project. Democrat operatives associated with the plan explained in an internal report leaked to the Times how the project sought to implant ideas into people's heads. The cost of the project totaled $100,000, the identical amount Facebook says the Russian Internet Research Agency spent trolling people on social media leading up to the 2016 election. The scheme itself likely didn't shift the election. I beg to differ. But the Twitter bot angle gained significant amount of national attention. Local and national media falsely suggested Russia was backing Moore's candidacy. The Montgomery Advisor was the first to cover the story. National media outlets quickly followed suit. Roy Moore flooded with fake Russian Twitter followers. So important. It really is. And now the Washington Post is forced to cover it organically. And I I just have to say that, there's for Doug Jones to be coming out and saying something about this is interesting to me. This is the original article here. And the fact that they used this term, we orchestrated an elaborate false flag operation that planted the idea that the Moore campaign was amplified on social media by Russian botnet. False flag. He saw the pod project as a, quote, small experiment. The research project was intended to help us understand how these kind of campaigns operated. We thought it was useful to work in context of a real election, but design it to have no impact. Why? Why would you test something out during a real election? Why would you even bother testing it if you didn't want it to have an impact? That is completely counterintuitive. Completely. What is the point of that? And then they try to make the comparison between $100,000 to $51 million that was spent on the election. I would argue that the $51 million was spent on television ads, which are they're kind of going by the wayside in the time of Twitter and social media. This ad spend, this money spend on ads for TV are like, we're back in the Stone Ages here. Oh, somebody's saying, and I understand this, if you give this credit, you prop up the Russian narrative. I have to say something. I don't agree that the Russian narrative happened. So I understand what you're saying, and I completely understand that you're saying basically if I say that this $100,000 campaign swayed the election towards Doug Jones, then I'm saying that what the Russians did could have swayed the election towards Hillary Clinton or towards Donald Trump. But the problem is that this was specifically targeted at Doug Jones, Roy Moore, and the supposed Russian influence campaign was targeted at both candidates. I don't think that Russia did this stuff at this level. I just don't. I'm sorry. Like, I know that there's been reports and people have come out and we've got all of these documents and, the people that ran this wrote the report. Let's imitate the tactics that were just used supposedly by Russia to try and influence another US election, but we know they won't work. What would be the point of that? Dmitry Melhorn, he sounds Russian. They're trying to strengthen American democracy. The Alabama project got started as Democrats were coming to grips with the Russians' weaponizing of social media to undermine the presidential campaign of Hillary Clinton and promote Donald J. Trump. Ooh. Now, what am I doing? I can't remember the name of the page that I created on Facebook. I can't remember what that name was. Sorry, it's just escaping me right now. It's escaping me. Look at this guy. Stace, look, Reid Hoffman, look serious. Lean against that bar. Look very serious. Look very, very serious. Now, Frank asked me today on the show, what happened to the DHS report? That's a great question. I can't find it anywhere. And there's a lot of other things floating around in the chat here that I might as well address as well. A couple of really interesting things that I've been looking into that I'll talk about in a second. But I'm going to research the hell out of every single person in this story. This is a long story. Listen to me. The New York Times never puts out a story like this just to report the news, guys. They're trying to get out in front of something. Do you guys remember back when Roy Moore lost, what was said about that election? And everybody was like, nothing ever happened. Maybe something's about to happen. Maybe something's about to happen. You never know. And I got to tell you, the people in the chat here, you guys are freaking, I wish that I could get like all of you in a room and just sit and talk with you for hours. I really do. Like, I'm reading your quickly flying by chats. And you're awesome. If you're watching this later on, I apologize. People get angry because I talk to the chat, but I just don't get this opportunity often. So after the Roy Moore election, there were rumblings like Roy Moore is going to win. They're going to give it to him. There was all that controversy. Now maybe a year later, we're seeing some of that now. So let's talk about a couple more things that are interesting to me. Just to summarize again, the company that wrote the report about Russian social media disinformation campaigns in 2016 election just ran their own social media disinformation campaign in an active and hotly contested and controversial Senate race in Alabama. The New York Times outed them out of nowhere, seemingly on December 20th. I'm saying they did it to get out in front of people, in front of something. And now the Attorney General in Alabama is looking into it and trying to see if it in any way changed the results of that election when Doug Jones won by 22,000 votes. And, we also had that video of the guy who was supposedly bussed in. There were all kinds of investigations, supposedly. Yeah, there's that. Now let's move on to something interesting. It's kind of conspiratorial, and I don't talk about this stuff very often on my channel. We're talking about, oh gosh, Harvey Reid. Thank you so much. My gosh, thank you. Thank you. Let's talk about these notes and letters and stuff that were slipped into these programs at that George H.W. Bush funeral. Because I've been watching so many different videos and trying to come to my own conclusion about it. And there's obviously no way for us to know what was in those letters or notes or anything like that. But, just kind of viewing this from the eyes, it's very weird. And I didn't, a lot of people talk about Hillary Clinton's reaction when she looked at it. I didn't see much of a reaction out of her. What I found the most telling out of all of it, two things. Number one, Laura Bush's face and Jeb's face after they received them. And the fact that Pence has got one too. Those were the two things that really, really got me. I just can't get over his reaction. Something disgusted him that was inside of that. I don't know what so it was the Obama, Clinton, the Bidens, Pence, and the Bushes that got these. And the reaction on when Laura Bush looks at that and she reads it fast, and then she shows it to Jeb, and Jeb is like, oh my gosh, this is just disgusting. He just looks utterly pissed and frustrated. And I don't know what was in those notes. Nobody knows what was in the notes. I will tell you though that as somebody who studies things, the news, watches this stuff all day long, my head, all day, like you guys do too. We are all consumers of both information and disinformation and all kinds of other stuff. From my perspective, it looks like things are about to really change. It looks like things are about to really change. I feel like, Donald Trump is taking the reins now. That's it. It's over. He's done playing games. He's taking the reins now. Our troops are coming home. He's flying in to see them on Christmas. He's talking about things that he never usually talks about. He is, he's talking about how they flew him in on a darkened plane. I'll put a couple of links in the description box for you guys of a couple of the videos that I watched on it. Oh, and then I'm seeing all this stuff here in my chat. Just bear with me. I'm one of those people where I jump around a lot. Like my husband gets really mad at me because I'll be in the middle of a conversation with him about something, and I'll have another thought pop into my head, and I'll stop that conversation without finishing it and jump to a new conversation and still be thinking about the first one in the back of my head, but wanting to get the second one out of my mouth. And it makes it very hard for him to keep track of what we're talking about at any given moment. So where was I going to even go? Now I don't even remember. Oh yeah, I was going to address, like, there are people asking me, they're saying like so and so is saying bad stuff about you and so is saying bad things about you. I don't care. I really don't. It's fine. You guys are here because you appreciate what I do and you like what I do. That's all that really matters. It's old and tired. It's happened so many times. Let people go. Let them, if that makes them happy, by all means, be happy. That's all I care about. If me living rent free in your head makes you happy, let me spend as much time there as possible. As much time. Because I love it. It's great. Anyway, so what am I working on? Let's go through what I'm working on. I'm putting together a timeline of notable events in 2016, 2018, and what they were in terms of like geopolitical, political implications for us in the country and things like that, starting in January and moving all the way up through December. It likely will not come out until the week after New Year's, sadly, because it's a lot of work, but I think it's important for us to have another timeline. I did one in 2017, a timeline of Spygate, like from the beginning till now, or till then, which was now at the time. And I want to do it again for 2018 because I feel like it's important for us to be able to keep track of what the heck is going on in this country. And I had planned a video for you guys last week before Christmas of all of the things that have happened in that week. And then I dove into that Uranium One case that has sparked a ton of controversy online. And I didn't ever do that video. But what I'm really and the other thing is there is a case that's going to be heard. Jerome Corsi's case that he brought against Mueller apparently will be heard January 3rd, even though Mueller was trying to stop it from being heard because the government is shut down. So that should be interesting to follow. And I really like what I want to try to do in 2019. Well, first of all, I will have my website up in 2019. And I'm going to have articles. I'm going to start writing. So I'm going to have articles that you guys can read and share. And that way my work is kind of cataloged that way. I'm going to have a research tab where I share all of my raw research for you guys. It'll be a media tab. I will also, where I have my videos. I will also have my trusted accounts that I follow on Twitter for information showcased in one feed on my website. I'm also going to do more instructional stuff, like in a series on how to use Pacer, how to search the CIA reading room, how to file a FOIA request, how to, how to do all of the things that I do when I do some research. So that way you guys have the empowerment to do it yourself and also check my work. I'm also adding a lot more interviews this coming year, and I would like to travel a lot more for this if I can. Because a lot of the times, after my interview with Papadopoulos, sitting in front of somebody is much better in terms of interviewing, because you can kind of like feel and gauge the reaction. I will have a very, very awesome announcement to make very soon about something that I'm doing and I'm organizing. And there's just the news. I mean, I have so many things that I want to get accomplished for you guys, and there's only so many hours in a day, but I'm going to keep going and breaking stuff as it comes out. And I want to stick to a schedule of every other day in content on my channel. And I'm glad that I had 1,000 of you here watching this with me today. The beginning of it was very data driven. At the end of it, I got a little more personal with you guys on this live stream, right? No, I'm not pregnant. My goodness. No, I have 2. I'm very happy with them. And they're beautiful, wonderful children. So, listen, thank you for being here. I don't think this will be my last video before the new year, but it may. So I wanted to wish all of you guys and say this sincerely, I am the most blessed person on the planet. I wake up every morning thanking God that I'm able to do this, what I love, and make a positive change for us moving forward. and that you guys are here with me and you support me, whether it's monetarily or by sharing. I still don't, I never forget the fact that this is a huge responsibility and I take it really seriously. And it's I just thank you. There's really nothing else I can say. I really do. And I really appreciate all of you, each and every one of you. And I love you like you're my family. And even the people that are mean to me, I have love for you too. I want you guys to have a fantastic new year. Thanks for sitting with me on this rainy Friday here and listening to me ramble on at the end here. If you guys want more live streams, let me know in the comments below. I'm happy to do them. It's easier for me, to be quite honest, because it doesn't need to render and all that nonsense. It takes forever. So if you want more live streams, you just let me know and I will do them for you. If you guys appreciate what I do and you have the means and would like to become a patron, I would be honored to have you. You can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/TracyBeans with a Z. You can also find me for now on Subscribestar, subscribestar.com/TracyBeans. It is an alternative to Patreon where I am finding my home given the controversy with Patreon. Also, when Jordan Peterson, thank you, Lyle, for the $10 super chat. I love you too. That's fantastic. Oh my gosh, thank you. When Jordan Peterson and Dave Rubin come out with their monthly subscription service, I will also be there. If you would like to send me a PayPal donation, you are more than welcome to do so using my PayPal address, which is in the description below. You guys support me so that I can do this 24 hours a day for you, and I've dedicated my life to doing it, and I couldn't do it without you. Love you guys so much. Have a fantastic Friday. Don't forget to listen to the Dark to Light podcast at 5 p.m. And I will talk to you very soon if I can figure out how to end this thing. I always have this problem at the end. It's very unprofessional. Love you guys. Talk soon.